welcome back. You're watching Overdrive with 3 teams and no less than 4 different drivers in championship contention. The 2010 Formula One season was a thriller, going down to the wire when Sebastian Vettel of Red Bull Racing walked away with the championship in the very last race in Abu Dhabi. But 2011 promises to be as exciting, if not more. And that's because there have been several rule changes and now there are new tracks to contend with, including the Formula One track right here in India. So here's everything that you need to know before the lights go off in Australia.
It promised to be the most competitive season in years. Fernando Alonso joined forces with Ferrari. The world champion moved to McLaren to team up with Lewis Hamilton. Formula One's acknowledged technical genius drew up another incredibly fast car for Red Bull. And a certain German 7-time world champion came back to drive a German Silver Arrow. But after a procession at Bahrain where Fernando Alonso won his first race in a Ferrari, the naysayers were out in force. The world champion struck back in 2 out of the next 3 races with opportunistic wins for his new team. Mark Webber took 2 wins for Red Bull, and then the action moved to Canada. Back on the F1 calendar after a break, freak track conditions and fading rubber ensured the Montreal street circuit returned to F1 with a bang, providing one of the most entertaining races of the year and bringing Lewis Hamilton back into championship contention. Ferrari returned to form after a mid-season slump in Germany, but not before this happened to create the next great F1 controversy.
Fernando is faster than you. Can you confirm you understood that message?
After that, it was a straight fight between Red Bull and Fernando Alonso that went down to the very last race of the season. A massive tactical error from the Scuderia and a flawless race from Red Bull's young German star saw Sebastian Vettel become the youngest Formula One world champion ever, leaving F1 fans around the world wishing for more in 2011.
But this season there are even more changes. Drivers change teams, teams change names, and of course there are enough rule changes to confuse even the most avid fan. But we're here to simplify things, so let's start with the teams and drivers.
Having won both the Constructors and Drivers titles in 2010, Red Bull Racing has retained both drivers, world champion Sebastian Vettel and Aussie Mark Webber. Chief designer Adrian Newey hasn't rested on his laurels either, and this year's car, the RB7, already seems to be the class of the field, making Red Bull odds-on favourites to win again in 2011.
You know, the team's very determined. It learnt a lot last year. We didn't get here by accident, and the challenge now is to stay there.
With the bitterness of the last race in Abu Dhabi behind them, Fernando Alonso and Ferrari are determined to win in 2011. The Spaniard and teammate Felipe Massa have shown good pre-season form, and the Scuderia has seen a behind-the-scenes shake-up to strengthen the strategic and technical team. The other championship contenders, McLaren and Mercedes too, field unchanged driver lineups. But after showing poor pace in early pre-season testing, Mercedes has upped its game with a major upgrade.
After a kind of disappointing last year, we have a big belief and hope into the car of this year. And we estimate to be back on the road for podiums and hopefully even winning races.
The biggest changes have happened in midfield. Robert Kubica's life-threatening rally accident sees German Nick Heidfeld step into the race seat at Lotus Renault, and Force India retains speedy German Adrian Sutil but moved 2010 reserve driver Paul Di Resta into the other race seat. Of the 3 new teams that entered the fray in 2010, only one team, Lotus, retains an unchanged driver lineup. Having started the 2010 season with one Indian driver, Hispania will have another in 2011 with India's first F1 driver Naren Karthikeyan returning to Formula 1 with an eye on the Indian Grand Prix.
And now let's move on to the rule changes for 2011. First up, we have a new tyre supplier in Pirelli, and this being Formula 1, we have two new acronyms to deal with. KERS or Kinetic Energy Recovery System is back, and we now have the new DRS or Drag Recovery System. How do they both work? Well, we got Constructors World Champions Red Bull and 2010 Formula 1 World Champion Sebastian Vettel to tell us more.
Hi, I'm Sebastian Vettel, and this time I'm reporting about the adjustable rear wing and KERS. Every time you step on the brakes, the kinetic energy is caught and directed to an electric motor, where it's converted into electrical energy and stored in batteries. At the push of a button, an additional 80 brake horsepower can be sent to the back of the wheels, either in small doses or all at once for about 6 seconds. KERS can make the lap time quicker by around 0.3 seconds. But as a rule, to overtake, you really need to be about 1.5 seconds faster per lap. Since most drive with KERS, in the race it is more of a strategic edge. How do you distribute your KERS power over each lap? You might need it for defense, or perhaps even keep it for an attack. KERS helps in qualifying, but its best moment is at the start. Drivers with KERS have already got fully charged batteries in the start formation. If a gap appears, you can move out of the field more easily or defend your position in front. In the race then, KERS can really tip the scales. Instead of the front wing, in 2011 we can change the aerodynamics of the car at the rear. We are allowed to adjust the rear wing, which reduces drag. But only in defined overtaking zones and when we are close enough to the car in front. When you leave the slipstream, you kind of bounce against a wall of air. The adjustable rear wing can make the car more streamlined and give you about 10 kilometers more speed.
And finally, we come to the circuits. Thanks to the unrest in Bahrain, that race was cancelled, and the 2011 season now begins next week in Australia. But the big date for all of us is the 30th of October, when we'll have the first Indian Grand Prix at the JP Motor Speedway in Noida. Who will lead the World Championship coming into New Delhi? Will Naren Karthikeyan have a competitive car to race in front of his home fans? We'll have some of the answers when the 5 red lights go out next week in Australia.